millions of people, probably even some of you listening right now, will turn on a sound machine tonight to get a better night's rest.
Right. It's basically an essential tool for surviving a noisy world.
Yeah, exactly. But what if that comforting hum is actually acting like a screensaver for your brain, like actively locking your body out of its most critical cellular repair cycles?
And secretly stealing up to 2 hours of REM sleep a week.
It's wild to think about. Welcome to today's deep dive. We know you are constantly bombarded with information and, you know, you just want the insights that actually matter. So today we are cutting through the noise to explore your invisible environment. These are the everyday, seemingly harmless things you absorb.
Like the specific acoustic frequency you hear while you're completely unconscious.
Right. Or even the molecular structure of the cooking oil you use for dinner. Things that profoundly shape your biology without you ever realizing it.
We are pulling from two incredibly revealing new sources today that map out how these unseen cumulative exposures dictate our long-term health.
Yeah, what's the first one?
First, we have a fascinating sleep study out of the University of Pennsylvania looking at the hidden biological costs of continuous background noise.
Then the second one is huge.
It really is. It's a sweeping global analysis published in Nature Medicine by the World Health Organization and the International Agency for Research on Cancer.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with that comforting hum on your nightstand. Millions of people rely on sound machines to mask disruptive traffic.
Or a noisy household.
Yeah, or just to calm a racing mind, honestly. And we assume that because we are asleep and because the sound is steady, our brain is getting a break.
Right, that makes intuitive sense.
But looking at the mechanics of this UPenn study, I want to try an analogy. If deep sleep is the body's physical trash collection.
Like literally clearing out cellular waste from your muscles and tissues.
Exactly. Then REM sleep is the brain's IT department. It's running emotional updates, consolidating memories, and doing the, high-level cognitive software maintenance.
I love that analogy.
But this study suggests that playing continuous noise acts like a screensaver that keeps the IT department from ever fully logging on to the network.
And the clinical data from the researchers at the University of Pennsylvania Perelman School of Medicine really backs up that screensaver effect.
What did they actually do in the study?
Well, they took 25 healthy adults, ages 21 to 41, with no history of sleep disorders or sound machine use.
Okay.
And they had them sleep in a highly controlled lab for 7 consecutive nights, hooked up to overnight polysomnography.
And if they're using polysomnography, they aren't just handing out a survey asking, did you sleep well?
No, not at all.
They are hardwiring these participants to continuously track brain waves, blood oxygen levels, heart rate, and eye movements. They're looking at the actual biological architecture of the sleep cycle.
Exactly. And they specifically tested pink noise played at 50 decibels.
Which, for context, is not loud at all, right?
No, it's roughly the volume of moderate rainfall outside your window.
Just a nice, soothing background sound.
Yeah, it's a volume most people consider perfectly relaxing. And it's important to distinguish pink noise from white noise here.
Right, because they're different.
White noise contains all frequencies at equal intensity, which can sound like harsh TV static.
Yeah, I hate that sound.
Most people do. But pink noise has deeper, louder low frequencies and softer high frequencies. It mimics natural sounds like a waterfall.
Okay, that sounds much better.
Because of that, it is heavily marketed as the superior sleep aid. But what's fascinating here is that the human brain never fully turns off.
Even when you're deeply asleep.
Even when you are completely unconscious, your auditory processing centers, specifically the thalamus, which acts as a sensory gatekeeper, are still actively monitoring your environment for threats.
Wow.
So when researchers played that 50 decibel pink noise, the participants experienced a significant drop in REM sleep.
How much of a drop?
They lost nearly 19 minutes of REM sleep per night.
19 minutes a night. Over a week? That is more than 2 hours of the IT department just being locked out of the system.
Yeah, adds up fast.
And the mechanics of why this happens are wild. Because the pink noise is a continuous acoustic stimulus. It keeps the auditory cortex partially firing.
The brain is constantly processing the static in the background.
Right. That low-level processing alters the brain's ability to cross the threshold and naturally transition into the deeper paralysis of the REM stage.
And chronic REM deprivation has compounding consequences. It doesn't just leave you feeling groggy in the morning.
What else does it do?
Well, REM sleep is when the brain engages in synaptic pruning and emotional regulation. Over time, missing those cycles impairs memory consolidation.
It's terrifying.
It is, and it's heavily linked to a higher risk of developing anxiety, depression, and even neurodegenerative conditions like Parkinson's disease.
But, testing this in a sterile, perfectly quiet lab with only pink noise playing feels a bit unrealistic. Nobody's bedroom is perfectly quiet.
That's a very fair point.
We use these machines specifically because we have real-world environmental noise traffic, planes, sirens. So if you add real-world disruptive noise to the mix, does the pink noise actually do its job and protect the sleep cycle?
The study tested that exact scenario, and it resulted in a double whammy.
Oh, no.
Yeah. When pink noise was combined with environmental noise, both deep sleep, that restorative N3 slow wave stage, and REM sleep declined.
Kidding.
Furthermore, participants spent an additional 15 minutes completely awake during the night compared to the control group.
So the very tool they thought was insulating their sleep architecture was actually compounding the sensory disruption.
Exactly. It made things worse.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because this exposes a massive vulnerability in how we use these devices outside of a laboratory.
How so?
There are YouTube white and pink noise videos with over 700 million views. And more importantly, parents are putting these machines right next to the cribs of newborn babies every single night.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
If continuous broadband noise is disrupting adult brainwaves, the impact on a developing infant brain has to be severe, right?
The vulnerability is vastly higher for infants. I mean, a newborn needs 14 to 17 hours of sleep a day.
That's a lot of sleep.
And they spend roughly 50% of that time in REM sleep compared to about 20% for an adult.
Wow, 50%.
Yeah, their brains are actively wiring neural pathways, developing language centers, and building cognitive frameworks during that highly active REM state.
And blasting continuous broadband noise inches away from their developing auditory cortex all night is providing a constant artificial stimulus.
Right. The text even mentions that if these devices are played above recommended limits, it might negatively affect young children's long-term hearing and language development.
Wait, there are recommended limits? Are we supposed to just throw them out the window?
Well, no, you don't have to throw them away. The established safe noise level for a hospital nursery is around 50 decibels, but many home sound devices, when placed on a crib rail or a nearby changing table, can generate sound pressure well above that threshold.
Because it's too close.
Exactly. The actionable fix for you, the listener, isn't necessarily to throw the machine away. It's to respect the physics of sound.
So what's the first step?
First, keep the volume at 50 decibels or less. Second, distance is your best tool. Move the machine 3 to 6 feet away from the bed.
That makes sense.
Because of the inverse square law, sound pressure drops exponentially as you move the source away from the ear.
The source also explicitly advises using a timer. Set it for 30 to 60 minutes.
Right, which is just enough time to mask the household noise while you fall asleep.
Yeah, once you sink into deep sleep, your brain's arousal threshold naturally rises anyway, meaning you are far less sensitive to moderate environmental sounds. You do not need the screensaver running all night.
And if you want the ultimate data-backed solution for protecting your sleep architecture from environmental noise, the UPenn study points to something infinitely cheaper and completely analog.
Oh, let me guess.
Earplugs.
The humble foam earplug. It makes perfect biological sense. You are mechanically blocking the disruptive sound waves without introducing a continuous new electronic stimulus for the brain to process.
Exactly.
The study showed that wearing ordinary foam earplugs restored about 72% of the deep sleep that environmental noise had stripped away.
That is massive.
Nearly 17 minutes of N3 deep sleep restored just by blocking the input.
Across nearly every measurement, sleep stages, total awakenings, sleep depth, and self-reported morning mood sleeping with earplugs mirrored the quiet control night far more effectively than any of the noise-exposed conditions.
It removed the friction without adding a new burden to the nervous system.
Precisely.
So this continuous background noise keeps the brain in a state of low-level stress, effectively locking the body out of its repair cycle. But, auditory stress is just one type of invisible background static.
Right, there's more to it.
When we look at our second source, this massive new WHO and IRC analysis, we see the exact same mechanism happening at a cellular level. But this time, the background static is metabolic.
And the scale of this global audit published in Nature Medicine is staggering.
It really is.
Researchers analyzed 36 different types of cancer across 185 countries.
That's basically the whole world.
Yeah. They looked at 18.7 million new cancer cases in the year 2022 alone, and the data revealed that 37.8% of those
Wait,
cases,
37.8?
yes, which equates to 7.1 million cancers, and they were directly tied to modifiable risk factors.
Modifiable, meaning preventable. Behaviors and exposures we can actually control.
Exactly.
Instead of looking at health like a boat with random leaks, I'm picturing the body as this massive manufacturing factory.
Okay, I like where this is going.
You have quality control inspectors, your immune cells, whose entire job is to walk the assembly line, identify defective cells, and pull them off the line before they multiply. But these preventable risk factors act like thick, toxic smoke, slowly filling the factory floor. The inspectors are blinded, the communication breaks down, and the defective cells slip through the cracks.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. And the gender gap in these numbers shows just how heavily lifestyle dictates that factory environment.
The demographic split is highly revealing, right?
Very. For men globally, 45.4% of new cancer cases were linked to preventable exposures. For women, it was 29.7%.
Wow, so almost half for men.
Yes. That gap proves that exposure patterns dictate biological outcomes. Cancer is not simply a random genetic lottery.
Right.
The transcription errors that lead to tumors are heavily accelerated by what you breathe, drink, eat, and absorb over decades.
So what is generating the most smoke on the factory floor? Smoking is the most obvious one, I assume.
Yes, globally, it accounts for 15.1% of all new cancer cases.
And for men specifically?
Smoking drove 23% of new cases, compared to just 6% in women.
Because smoking creates direct, cumulative DNA damage through known carcinogens. But the second highest driver of preventable cancer globally might surprise people.
What is it?
Infections. They contributed to 10.2% of global cases. This includes viruses and bacteria like HPV, hepatitis B and C, and H. pylori.
Ah, right.
Among women, infections were responsible for 11% of new cases, making it a higher statistical driver than smoking for that demographic.
That's incredible. What's the mechanism there?
Chronic inflammation.
Yeah.
When a tissue is constantly fighting off an infection like H. pylori in the stomach lining, the cells are forced into a state of rapid turnover and repair.
Which increases the chance for errors.
Exactly. Mathematically, the faster cells are forced to divide and replicate their DNA under stress, the higher the probability of a transcription mutation occurring.
And alcohol was the third major driver at 3.2% of global cases.
Hmm.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we see that specific environmental exposures translate directly into specific biological failures. Nearly half of all these preventable cancers globally were concentrated in just 3 types: lung, stomach, and cervical cancer.
Which maps perfectly. Lung cancer maps directly to smoking and air pollution. Stomach cancer maps heavily to that H. pylori bacterial infection. And cervical cancer maps to long-term untreated HPV.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? How do you actually clear the smoke out of the factory?
The source provides a highly specific 5-step blueprint for rebuilding your metabolic terrain.
But, you know, as I was reading this blueprint, I hit a major point of friction regarding their macronutrient advice.
Oh, what was that?
The text explicitly says we should shift our diets away from excess fat and aim for about 250 grams of healthy carbs, daily things like food and white rice.
Right.
That completely bucks the massive high-fat keto and carnivore trends that currently dominate the wellness space.
It does. It creates a fascinating point of tension with modern diet trends, and it all comes down to mitochondrial function and cellular mechanics.
How so?
Well, the researchers focus heavily on the metabolic state of the terrain. If your dietary fat intake approaches 60 or 70% of your daily calories, you force your body to rely almost entirely on fat for cellular fuel.
Which keto proponents say is a good thing?
Right, but according to this text, chronic reliance on high fat, specifically certain types of fats, can drive systemic inflammation and fuel the metabolic dysfunction that allows abnormal cells to establish a blood supply.
So what do they recommend?
They recommend keeping fat intake between 30 and 40% of your daily calories while utilizing easily digestible single-ingredient carbohydrates to maintain a steady, low-stress glucose supply for the cells.
But I mean, fat is a massive, broad category. The text doesn't villainize a perfectly ripe avocado, right?
No, not at all. It zeroes in on one highly specific molecule, linoleic acid, or LA.
The dreaded seed oils.
Exactly. This is a polyunsaturated fat found heavily in industrially processed seed oils: canola, corn, soybean, safflower, sunflower, and grapeseed oils.
And the goal they set is intense. They suggest keeping linoleic acid intake under 5 grams a day, ideally under 2 grams.
Which is really hard to do.
To do that in a modern food environment, you basically have to aggressively swap all those restaurant and processed seed oils for traditional fats like grass-fed butter, ghee, or tallow.
Yeah, you really have to pay attention.
But let's look at the underlying physiological logic. How does a seed oil physically cause structural damage to a human cell?
To understand the damage, we have to look at the metabolic byproducts. Let's compare linoleic acid to alcohol, which we just established as a major global cancer driver.
Okay.
When you consume alcohol, your liver works to break it down, converting it into acetaldehyde. Acetaldehyde is a highly toxic, volatile molecule.
Right.
Now, when high amounts of linoleic acid break down inside your tissues, it oxidizes and forms a different toxic aldehyde called 4-HNE.
4-HNE. And the text notes that these two molecules, acetaldehyde from alcohol and 4-HNE from seed oils, act almost identically once inside the body.
They are essentially molecular rust.
Molecular rust. I love that description.
It describes the mechanism perfectly. 4-HNE is a highly reactive compound that physically attacks your cellular machinery. It binds to the lipids and proteins that make up the mitochondrial membrane.
And your mitochondria use a complex system called the electron transport chain to generate energy.
Exactly. When 4-HNE binds to that membrane, it literally rusts the engine. The mitochondria become structurally deformed.
So they can't produce energy.
They can no longer produce efficient energy, and more importantly, they lose the ability to signal for apoptosis.
Which is the programmed cell death that prevents a defective cell from multiplying.
Right. When mitochondria are rusted out by 4-HNE or acetaldehyde, you create the exact low-oxygen, high-inflammation environment where tumors thrive.
So the blueprint is clear. Lower total fat to that 30 to 40% range, drastically cut linoleic acid to stop the production of molecular rust, and eliminate the obvious carcinogens like alcohol and smoking. But what active steps actually build up metabolic resilience? The text puts a massive emphasis on movement, but again, with a surprising caveat.
Yeah, they recommend committing to daily walking outdoors. If you're starting from scratch, just do 15 to 20 minutes a day and add 5 minutes a week.
But they explicitly warn against chronic overexertion from extreme high-intensity interval training, or HIT.
Right.
Which again goes entirely against the grain of hardcore fitness culture.
The reasoning is rooted in our evolutionary biology. When you engage in extreme, chronic HIIT, your nervous system interprets that intense physical stress as a literal threat to your survival.
Your body thinks it's constantly outrunning a predator.
Exactly. To cope, it floods your system with cortisol, your primary stress hormone.
And cortisol's biological job is to mobilize immediate energy for survival.
Yeah.
And it does that by shutting down long-term, energy-expensive repair projects.
Specifically your immune function and your DNA repair mechanisms.
Wow. So if you are chronically spiking cortisol through extreme exercise, you are essentially trading long-term cellular health for a short-term calorie burn.
Daily, moderate movement builds metabolic resilience. Chronic overexertion tears it down.
The same principle of evolutionary balance applies to their recommendation on vitamin D. They link sufficient vitamin D to a significantly lower risk of colorectal, breast, and other cancers.
You want to aim for blood levels of 60 to 80 nanograms per milliliter.
And getting that from a daily walk in the sun knocks out 2 birds with 1 stone.
Definitely. Vitamin D is actually a prohormone. It doesn't just build bone density, it physically regulates the expression of hundreds of genes.
Especially immune signaling.
Yes, it acts as a chemical messenger that tells those factory quality control inspectors, your immune cells, to remain active, vigilant, and balanced.
Reducing the systemic inflammation that drives disease.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the final piece of the metabolic puzzle, and it loops perfectly back to our very first source, sleep.
The IIRC actually classifies disrupted circadian rhythms as a probable carcinogen.
The physiological connections are undeniable. When you suffer from chronic sleep deprivation or a disrupted circadian rhythm, your body halts the production of natural killer cells,
which are the specialized immune cells that hunt down microscopic tumors.
Furthermore, sleep deprivation elevates resting cortisol, the exact stress hormone you are trying to lower through mindful movement.
You really need those 7 to 9 hours of uninterrupted sleep in a dark, cool room to anchor your circadian rhythm.
Allow the cells to clear out the molecular waste generated during the day.
And clearly, based on the University of Pennsylvania data, you need that sleep environment to be free of loud, continuous broadband noise so your brain can actually hit REM.
And your body can drop into deep N3 sleep It's a completely unified system. Your external auditory environment directly dictates your internal metabolic environment.
It's all connected.
We've covered a tremendous amount of ground today. And I know that hearing terms like cancer risk or REM sleep deprivation can sound incredibly intimidating.
It definitely can.
But, if you look closely at the core message of both of these sources, the takeaway is deeply empowering. You have a massive amount of control over your invisible environment.
You are not at the mercy of an entirely random genetic lottery or uncontrollable sensory disruptions.
Exactly. From the simple physics of moving a sound machine across the room or setting a 30-minute timer to swapping out your cooking oil for butter and taking a 20-minute walk in the sun.
You hold the tools to clear the smoke out of the factory and let your body do what it was designed to do, repair itself.
Absolutely.
This raises an important question, though. Both of today's sources point to a profound evolutionary mismatch.
What do you mean?
Think about the irony. We use artificial electronic sound machines to mask unnatural, loud city traffic. We consume highly processed, industrially extracted seed oils and alcohol for modern convenience and socialization. If human biology evolved to thrive in quiet, natural environments, eating single-ingredient whole foods and sleeping in sync with the sun, what other modern comforts in your life are secretly keeping your biology in a state of high alert?
That is a fascinating thought to sit with today. What else in your daily routine is acting as a screensaver, preventing your body's internal IT department from logging on and doing its job?
It's definitely something to think about.
Thank you for taking this deep dive with us. We encourage you to pick just one small thing we unpacked today. Maybe test out a pair of simple foam earplugs tonight, or check the ingredient label on your favorite salad dressing for seed oils and run a little self-experiment.
Just luck with it.
Until next time, stay curious and take care of your terrain.